My mate barely got a look at it. A few seconds at most, shining torch through the gap, head down, trying to see how far the crawl went. Shit. And then he was flying backwards. Landed on his backside in the creek bed, freezing water soaking through his jeans, torch pointing at the ceiling. He didn't speak for a moment, just sat there, staring at the hole in the cave. Then he said, "We need to go. Right the fuck now. Get out." We didn't argue. That was over 20 years ago. I still think about it. Especially when I'm sitting at the family cabin down the road, fireplace going, glass of red. The night gets quiet enough that you can hear the land outside. Because that cave, this whole area, sits on cast limestone. Ancient systems running under the ground in every direction. Mostly unmapped. And lately, I've been wondering what might be living down there, and whether there's more than one way out. It was the late 90s. A bunch of mates and I had a weekend out at my family's property south of Braidwood. Subalpine area, New South Wales. Dirt bikes, four-wheel driving, a massive bonfire down by the river, cases of beer, bourbon, the usual. Not far down the road, inside Deua National Park, there's a cave system. The whole region has an interesting history. Outlaw country once. The kind of place where men who didn't want to be found could disappear into the ranges and not come back out. Not to mention a few unexplained legends. Around 1 a.m., as the bonfire was burning low, I piped up with the bright idea to drive down the track and take a look at the caves. Looking back, not my best call. 8 of us piled into the four-wheel drive, 2 crammed into the rear cargo section on those little fold-down kiddie seats. Not one of us should have been behind the wheel, but we went anyway. The first strange thing happened on the way. We came flying around a blind corner on the dirt road and hit the brakes hard. Standing in the middle of the track, completely still, were 3 animals. A white horse, a white cow, and a white kangaroo. Now, a white roo on its own is rare enough to stop you cold. But 3 white animals, together, standing dead center of a dirt road in the absolute middle of nowhere at 1 a.m. We all looked at each other, and nobody said a word. There wasn't anything to say. We eased around them slowly. They didn't startle, didn't move, just watched us pass. Nobody said much after that. We pulled into the cave's small parking area. No other cars, no campers. It was rare to see anyone there even back then, let alone that late. The walk to the entrance is a few hundred meters. You head uphill along the side of a small gully. Steep drop to one side, the bush rising up on the other. The trees out there are old, enormous. Dense ferns and open scrub underneath, and it's imposing enough in daylight. That night it was overcast, a light drizzle coming down. The torches we had were old yellow beam things. No LEDs back then. They threw a dull cone of light, and then the dark just took over. No matter where you pointed them, out into the scrub, up into the canopy. The light ran out, and then there was nothing. Just black in every direction. The kind of black that feels like it has weight. About halfway up the trail, something changed. Not a sound, not a reason you could name. Just a feeling that settled over the group. A general wrongness that none of us had put there and none of us could shake. Nobody said anything about it. We all just felt it at the same time. 3 of our group said they were heading back. I handed over the keys without an argument. They went back down the hill, and the 5 of us kept going. The cave entrance is set into a hill face overlooking the gully. There's a heavy steel grate door, bolted over the opening. Solid bar construction, padlocked shut. Every single time I've ever been to that place, before or since, that padlock has been on and locked. That night, it was hanging open. The grate was unlatched and swung back against the rock. We stood there looking at it. Then, because we were 20 and drunk and stupid, we climbed in. There were ladders down to the first chamber. We could make out the floor below, a shallow creek running through the middle of the space, flowing from somewhere deeper in the system. Ceiling low, everything wet and close and cold. To go further, you had to get on your belly and crawl through the creek. Maybe 3 or 4 meters of tight passage before it opened up into whatever was beyond. None of us were keen. We were already wet through and had nothing but the torches in our hands. Except one bloke. There's always one. He was the kind of mate who never said no to anything and never thought things through. And he was just drunk enough to think this was a good idea. He said he'd go, took my torch, crouched down at the gap, and started pushing in. He hadn't even got fully flat when he yelled and threw himself back. He scrambled away from the opening like something had grabbed for him, sat there in the creek with the water running cold through his clothes, and that look on his face. I've seen blokes get hurt, especially him. I've seen people shit scared. This was something else entirely. This was the look of someone whose brain had seen something it didn't have a name for. He said it slowly, firmly, but his eyes were everywhere. We need to go. Right. The fuck. Now. Get out. No explanation. We didn't need one. We scrambled back up the ladders. One of the boys swung the grate shut behind us and jammed a rock hard into the frame. Don't ask me why. Instinct. Then we were moving back down the hill, slipping in the mud on the edge of the gully, trying to be fast without going over the side. He kept looking back over his shoulder. We asked him what was happening. He said, "Just listen. Make sure nothing is following us." Nobody said another word until we were in the car. With the headlights on and the engine running and the road opening up ahead, he told us what he'd seen. When he pushed the torch into the passage, it lit up maybe 3 or 4 meters of crawl space before the rock opened into the next chamber. He was sweeping the beam around trying to see more of it when something moved in the shadows on the far side. It moved fast. It wasn't an animal. He knew that immediately. The shape was wrong. It was shaped like a person, but thin. Impossibly thin. Sickly white. It was moving on all fours, but not the way a person crawls. It was scurrying, crossing the far end of that opening from one side to the other, fast, like it knew exactly where it was going. He didn't see the head. He didn't know if it had one. We drove back to the property in silence. He sat up the rest of the night beside the fire. Didn't sleep. After that weekend, he never mentioned it again. I brought it up once, a few months later. He just looked at me and changed the subject. I never asked again. Some things you don't push. 20 years passed. I took my wife for a walk up into that gully. Nice day, late morning. We'd been to the campground a few times over the years. I never told her anything about that night. We didn't get far, maybe 100 meters in, just where the trail starts to climb and the trees get big. She stopped walking. She said, "I don't know. It doesn't feel right out here. Can we go back?" I looked at her. She didn't know a single thing about that place. Never told her. But she stopped in the same stretch of trail where 3 of our mates had turned around 2 decades before, and she said she didn't like it. We went back. The family still owns the property. I still drive down to the cave campground occasionally. During the day, my wife won't come. Some nights, sitting at the holiday cabin in the dark with the fire going, I think about that cave, about those 3 white animals standing still in the headlights, about a padlock that should have been locked and wasn't. about what my mate saw in 3 seconds of torchlight and what it did to him, and how he took it to wherever he keeps the things he doesn't talk about. I think about the ground under this country, cast limestone, hollow, ancient, riddled with systems that go back further than anyone has ever mapped. There are sinkholes across this region, some of them open without warning. A paddock, a riverbank, ground that looked solid yesterday. The family block runs all the way down to the river. There are places down there I haven't walked in years. And sometimes I think about what might be moving through the dark below all of it, through systems that connect things that were never meant to connect, and whether one day the ground might just open up